Hey y'all, this is Attorney Danyl Patterson, candidate for the 190th State Representative seat here in Pennsylvania. So you know that's West Philly, baby. So calling out to my neighbors from Cedar Park, Mill Creek, Haddington, and Dunlap, West Powelton, East Parkside, West Belmont, Cathedral Park, Carroll Park, Winfield Heights, of course, 5 Points, and Allegheny West. I am here for you all today, and today is Feel Good Friday. I'm feeling pretty good. Uh, and so we decided that we're going to give you a little civics lesson today. And the reason for this here civics lesson is that we want to make sure that you are best in position to advocate for yourself. And I know that might seem so simple, right? And we all think that we've got it together, but in actuality, we don't. So many times I hear people who say, well, this one didn't respond to me, or I took that concern over to the other one, and I feel like nothing's getting done. And sometimes it's because we're not starting in the right places. So I want to make sure that we are all starting in the right places so we can get done what we need done together. Our voices are so strong collectively. And I'm just going to start out with the stage 3 stimulus package, because that's the biggest example of top down legislation that we have right in front of us today. Thank you for joining me today, Jackie Brunson, hey Zahira, April, Tamika Johnson. Glad to see that DKOD is in the building on this fine Friday, and I mean this fine Friday. So I'm gonna just let y'all know I was doing lawyer work today. So I was trying to get my lawyering in, but meanwhile, I couldn't stop looking out the window. All I wanted to do was go outside. I just want to be outside, be amongst the people, let some air breathe on me. But then I realized then I got to be too close to the people. I'd be in violation of the order. And I'm so scared that somebody else is not going to listen. And the reason I'm worried is because, hey, it's warm. They say it's 80 plus degrees outside now, and your mask protects me and my mask protects you. So if you're not wearing one, then I don't have any protection. And I've got to remember that. So we've got so many people who are fighting back against things and who feel like this is not the right place to be. But meanwhile, our government is really trying its best, or at least I'm going to say on the local and state level, to protect us. Now, hindsight is always 2020, and we can Monday morning quarterback all you want about who was right and who was wrong. But I'm going to tell you this, almost 9% of infection, almost 9% of our entire population in Pennsylvania of infections has been in Philadelphia. So that means we've been at the highest risk. So not only have the infections been in Philadelphia, but of course, proportionately, the deaths have been in Philadelphia. But even more disproportionately, almost 65% of the individuals who have died have been in Philly. So that means that regardless of whatever else you're looking at, what you see is that Philly has been disproportionately impacted, and more so our communities. So let's talk about what's going on at the federal level. And the reason we're going to start there is because what I find is that so often folks are confused and they think that every problem they have is actually resolved at the federal level. And you know that this is true. Let me tell you how I know. Because nobody ever cares about any election other than the presidential. As I was out knocking doors early on, before everything hit, because I was outside when it was 20 degrees and 15 degrees. And I'm sure if you guys look on my page, or if you were following me then, you saw that I was out there in the freezing cold having to duck into the bars, where there are lots of people, by the way, at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, just so I could get some heat and, let my toes thaw out some. But everybody comes out to vote for the presidential, right? Because our president's going to impact every single thing. And I'm going to tell you that's really not true. But if you look on the news and you see what's going on with, Trump, because I hate adding president to the beginning of that, but I guess we know he is, because he wanted to make sure that he signed them stimulus checks, right? He wanted his name on there. Is that all we see is Trump, 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 and what Trump thinks about things. He's the president. And yeah, he impacts things on the federal level, but he's only one of the 3 branches of government. And that's what we got to remember. One of the 3 branches of government. And the 3 branches of government are on the federal and the state levels. So once we go through this, you're going to really, really understand where this is. And I know everybody's going to say, well, I understand this. I understand it. But I'm be honest. I didn't understand it probably until law school. And I'm going to just be real with you. I mean, I remember studying in the 5th grade for my civics test and social studies because I was one of them social studies nerds, right? And I studied with that thing for 2 weeks. I had my after school babysitter quizzing me on these things. And you want to know the one that I got wrong every single time, and then I got it wrong on the test? The legislature. I was so confused as a child as to what exactly the legislature does. And I think that we are still that way. And I didn't understand what the legislature did until I started drafting law, interpreting law, having to rely on law to really understand how important law is. So let's talk about it. So at the federal level, right, we got the pyramid. So we have the executive branch, and then we have Congress. So that's the first L, the executive branch and the judiciary, and they meet. Okay, now I'm throwing my diamonds up. Okay, whatever. They meet. So what you're supposed to understand is that the reason it's a diamond is because none is more important or have authority over the other. As in fact, we have a checks and balance system. It's supposed to be a give and take. So the president is the executive branch of government. And then we have the Supreme Court is the judicial branch of government. And then we have Congress, the legislative branch of government. So the laws are actually created over by the by the Congress. And that's important because all Trump actually does is sign law. He doesn't draft anything. If you recall, all he does is sign it or don't sign it. Now, he might negotiate as to what things he thinks should be in it, but he is not creating law. As a matter of fact, he was creating law with these things called executive orders, and then they had to tell him he can't do that. So everything cannot be an executive order. And the reason for that is because there's supposed to be a system of checks and balances, right? So in Congress, now we're going to go there because that really, relates to what we're doing at the state seat. So we have in Congress, we have the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives is entirely based on census tracts. That's why we got to make sure that we go out there and we fill out those census. For anybody who has not, make sure you go to census.gov, that's census.gov, and complete your census information. As I explained before, the census determines your allocation of monies and resources that are going to come back to your community. But it also determines how many representatives you get in Congress, right? Right. So now that's the House of Representatives. Then you have the Senate. The Senate, every state gets 2. It does not matter, which is why there's always the fight, right? With North Dakota and South Dakota and Wyoming and Montana that have like 15 people collectively in them. And they were the folks who wanted to open up so badly and they didn't want to be included. We want to open up. We want to open up. Okay, well, at the Senate level, they have exactly the same number of senators as Pennsylvania does, which is a much larger state. And Florida has the exact same number of senators as Pennsylvania does. And Florida is a bigger state. But even more ridiculous is that New York and California, which are the 2 biggest states, with California actually being an economy entirely of itself, has 2 senators. Okay? Okay. So now what happens? They try to get together the 2 chambers. It can, a bill can, originate either in the House or in the Senate. And then, they pass it. It goes to the other chamber to be voted on, to be changed, to be altered, all those things. During this time, yes, the president can have a say because there are things they want in or don't want in. And that's a negotiation period where they're trying to say, hey, I am not going to pass this. Because what did we learn last night? Trump made sure that he knew that doesn't matter what's in it, he's not signing it. Now, that's very important because that means that they need to have a supermajority to pass this thing, which means that 2/3 of Congress needs to be able to pass this thing in order to be veto proof. Okay. And he knows that they don't have it because the Senate is, they're almost deadlocked. They're 49-51, or actually 48-52, I think now. And then, the House is not a super majority, meaning it's not a 2/3 majority. Okay. Yes, that's exactly right, Rob. The judicial branch interprets the laws. So what happens? But we're just talking right now about stimulus and trying to get it passed. So now we know that there was this whole negotiation period, and I need y'all to look back for a minute. And we're gonna go back to stimulus one and stimulus two. When we were, let's even start with stimulus one. We totally were just like, we have no idea what's going on, and the sky is falling, the sky is falling. We got to do something, right? Right. So the Republicans and the Democrats were on there. We're gonna get it done. We're gonna get it done. We're bipartisan effort. We're gonna get it done so quickly. But was it really bipartisan effort or was it not? Well, let's see. The Democrats wanted student loan forgiveness. We didn't get that. The Democrats wanted child care credits. We didn't get that. The Democrats wanted actual direct payments to citizens. We didn't get that. The Democrats wanted additional workforce training. We didn't get that. Basically, the Democrats didn't get anything. They didn't. And they were promised in two rounds, both in round one and round two, hey, that's okay. We're going to do a round three. And that's when we're going to give you direct payments, and we're going to give you student loan forgiveness, and we're going to give you everything you ever wanted. We're going to give you money for the cities and the states. We're going to give you everything in round three. And so it's round three, and the Democrats come forth with a plan that has direct payments, aid to healthcare workers, aid to the cities and the states, more student loan forgiveness, free colleges and universities, extending the pandemic unemployment stuff all the way to February of 2021. So that means that, the period will be longer. And guess what Trump said immediately? Doesn't matter what they pass, I'm not signing it. That's right, Gilda. Thank you, Mitch McConnell. And you know what? So did y'all see last night on the news because they didn't publicize this on CNN, and I felt good about this. Mitch McConnell finally was honest and said that he was wrong when he said that this is Obama's fault and that Obama did not leave them in the right situation to be able to handle the pandemic. I mean, it only took 9 weeks for him to come off of that. 9 weeks. Is this? Yeah, I think this is week. So technically, I guess if you count Pennsylvania, because we were a lockdown as of 9 o'clock on a Monday, not on a Friday. So technically, week 10 starts Monday. Okay. Yes, that's exactly right, Deborah Osborne. Trump said his DOA. He doesn't care what's in it. Okay. Yes. And that's correct. Thank you, Rhonda. And appointments of judges as opposed to election of state and federal. So what Rhonda is speaking about is on the federal level, judges are appointed. So this is where the real fight comes from when you talk about why the big fight about the presidency. And this is the one that we kind of forget about. Judges in the federal level are for life. So we had, a guy who was 45 that was actually put into federal position. And so he's going to be there probably until I die. So that means that, he can be 11 years old and he will still be SCOTUS. And I know people say, what difference does it make? I'm going to just be honest with you. At a point, these judges get out of touch with reality. As an attorney, I'll give you an example. I was in court previously, and I was sitting there, and a young man who had probation had been out on probation, and the judge was in front of him. This is in Philadelphia courts, where we are elected. The judge said, well, young man, one of the requirements of probation is that you look for a job. He said, I have been looking for a job, Your Honor. He said, well, where have you been looking for a job? So he tells him, I've been to Target, Walmart, Wawa, wherever it was. I wasn't really paying attention. Well, let me tell you when my head snapped up and I looked. That judge put that man in jail for violation of his probation because, wait for it, he didn't get any letters of decline from the jobs. I don't know about y'all, but I've never seen a letter of decline. We're not interested from Target. You go online to the kiosk when you go in there, you apply for the job, either you hear from them or you don't. Okay, we're not talking about upper echelon tech savvy stuff. We're not talking about you needed a headhunter to get in. We're talking about you walked up to the Wawa kiosk and you applied for a job. And that judge put that man in jail. Why? Because the judge was, 90, 11 years old and had no clue that you don't get rejection letters from jobs anymore at that level. I'm going to come here to the comments for a minute just to make sure we didn't miss anything. You were there for an hour with the mask on and came inside. Okay. So that's the federal level. Now, what happens at the federal level, right? The federal level, that's where we make the money. The government can print the money, and they've been printing it. Okay. So all that stuff that we've been told all this time they didn't have money for because it was socialist, all of a sudden, when the corporations were getting ready to fail, we found trillions of dollars, not billions. We found trillions of dollars. Our grandkids get ready to be paying for this. Okay. Fine. But our grandkids are getting ready to pay for stuff that did not benefit their great grandparents. Well, let me tell you how. We all saw what happened with PPP. As a matter of fact, we're seeing the downfall of PPP because we are seeing folks who went out. Why did this dude go buy a Rolls Royce? Like, he has this fake trunking company and he was able to go buy a Rolls Royce. I don't know. Meanwhile, you had folks who only wanted $50,000 who couldn't get through because Wells Fargo and Chase and Bank of America, just to name a few, decided that they were going to process loans only that gave them large payouts in processing fees. You don't get much money processing $25,000, but you get a whole bunch of money processing $20 million for Ritz-Carlton Ventures, for processing monies for Shake Shack Ventures, for processing money for Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And all those folks already had additional lines of credit and things that they could tap. They were not in the same dire straits as, I don't know, maybe Sabrina's over there on 34th and Haverford. They were in more dire straits, these little small businesses, because y'all know when we saw it, we all thought, ooh, Small Business Association, we're going to get help for, the West Philly locksmith on 41st and Chestnut Street now, because they moved. So, but that's who we thought we were helping. So we were all gung-ho for it as a society. Yes, help these small businesses. Yeah, so that's not who got the help. And come on now, the Republicans knew that when they passed it. How did we know they knew that? Because the first thing that Trump did was fire the inspector general who was going to have oversight for the money. Yeah, Deborah Osborne, you're right. The entire bill actually is like 1,800 pages. The 66 pages was just the synopsis. So we know they ain't reading that much. Because we've also learned that the legislators don't read entire bills. We have learned that quite frequently. So now what happens is that then the courts, there's the court battle, right? So I am state A and state B, and I didn't get enough, because what's going to happen is that, states like New York and California are already rising up. They are not getting their proportionate share. And I'm sure you all see that with the red state, blue state argument. And Cuomo just said it. Look, we are more than half of this economy, talking about New York, and we aren't getting any money. Okay, so now what we have is a problem. So there's going to be a court battle, and they're going to go over the SCOTUS, which is right now majority Republican appointees nominations, and then that were approved by the Republican Senate. And just so you know, that even while we've been in lockdown, there have been 19 additional federal judge appointships at lower levels. So the way you become like a Supreme Court judge is you kind of move up the levels, right? So we already know that they're steady. The courts are being stacked at the lower levels. And why do we care about that? Because to get to the Supreme Court, you got to go to the other one. So first you got to go to the district court, then you go to the Court of Appeals that's in your area, and then you go to SCOTUS. And as we know, depending upon where you are, these rulings can vary widely. And I'm sure you all know that because you watched what was going on with the immigration debacle when we were putting them babies in cages down at the border. And so you saw what happened. California, which has that area, the Ninth Circuit, is actually extraordinarily liberal and came back with one saying. And then, you got Minnesota that came back with another one. So as a result, and you had Texas that came back with even another one. So now we got to get up to SCOTUS and figure out whether or not the president was actually within his rights as the commander in chief to determine this executive order to lock them babies up at the border. Okay. Now, so let's take that same model over to the states. So in the states, we got the executive, and that's the governor. And since we're in Pennsylvania, we're going to talk about Governor Wolf. We've got our judicial branch, and that is the Commonwealth Courts of Pennsylvania. And then we've got our legislative branch. That's who makes the laws. That's the reason I'm coming there. That's who makes the laws. And so in the legislative branch, we have a Senate, just like in the federal courts, and we have a General Assembly. So that's the House of Representatives at the state level, one of which I am trying to become. So I would like to be your state representative for the 190th legislative district. So that's right. I know this is an amazing thing here in Philadelphia. I would actually like to be a lawyer that actually makes laws. Yes, I am asking the people to vote for me, a lawyer, to actually go to Harrisburg and make some laws to impact the people. Now, I just told you that the feds can just build money, right? So they can decide how much money is going to be in the economy. Well, the states have a budget. Yes, that's right, Sarita. We are majority Republican, which is even more fascinating. And I'm going to get there because our judicial branch in Pennsylvania has actually come down with some very un-Republican kind of ideas. I actually kind of make it like Earl Warren. For those of you who don't know, Earl Warren is who actually did the Brown versus Board of Education. And Eisenhower said that was his biggest mistake of his entire presidency, was appointing him or nominating him, because he really thought he was going to come down against the civil rights movement. And I guess Earl Warren said, well, I'm on here for life now. You can't do nothing about it. I'm going to do whatever I want. And he just expanded everybody's rights. And so an example of our Supreme Court and their new activism that's been going on is that I know y'all know about Meek Mill, and that they were, they had their King's Bench decision, meaning they didn't even go, and need actual legislation that was being challenged to make it up. They just said, the court is sitting up here looking at this situation, and we decided y'all need to let Meek go. Y'all need to give him this new trial. That's exactly what happened. So it was not. That's an example of an activist court. So that's what they call that, an activist court. They acted without being prompted to. So now the legislative branch, and this becomes very important right now. And I'm sure you are all seeing what happens at the legislative branch, because what we're seeing is how money is now being disseminated at the local levels. Okay, so this becomes important. And the reason I wanted to explain the federal level is so you could understand the state level just a little bit better. So now we're going to the states, and the governor, he signs and vetoes laws. Now, the stay-at-home order, that's an executive order, okay? And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has actually upheld the executive order. So that means that our Supreme Court in PA has supported Governor Wolf's decision and said that is within his scope to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the Commonwealth that he issued the stay-at-home order. And so y'all know, this is not even like new, okay? This actually dates back to the bubonic plague and smallpox. These laws have actually been on the books as far as the health, safety, and welfare that what they call quarantine for the public safety has been all the way up to the Supreme Court previously. And I'm talking about SCOTUS, not the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. Okay. Hey, Ish, you haven't been on in a while. We miss you. How you doing, darling? So now what happens? So the monies from all the CARES Act, those things go to the state of Pennsylvania. And now we have the stay-at-home order. And then the legislators at the state of Pennsylvania have to determine how they're actually going to put us at home, one, and two, disseminate the money. And that's where we widely disagree. So the state representatives, the House and the Senate, decided that real estate was not essential. That's what they voted on it, and you can go look it up. And actually, Alliance for a Better Pennsylvania has been doing research on this and actually giving out a scorecard for our representatives who voted against it, because our Philadelphia delegation did. So they were in support of the Republican majority, and and the reason I say it's a Republican majority is because in Harrisburg, it is a Republican majority. That that real estate transactions were not essential, not thinking about what we talked about yesterday, domestic abuse situations, people who were in the middle of relocating, buying houses, selling houses, trying to rent, all of those kind of things. Okay, so that's what they decided. The other thing is that there was this whole waiver system about who got a waiver and who did not. And I don't know if you guys are watching the news, but waivers were given out and taken away like in the dead of night. So there were companies who thought that their business was essential and they could be open and found out that they weren't. So what did that result in? Lots and lots of fines, because some businesses opened and they apparently were not supposed to, and then they got fined. And then other businesses didn't know they could be open, did not open until days later into the initial stay-at-home order. There was confusion. Actually, Gilda, if we hold on to what we have and we flip 7 seats, we actually would have the majority. I know 7 seats technically seems like a lot, but apparently we're really on the verge. And a lot of that Republican majority is because of something we call gerrymandering. And I'm going to talk about gerrymandering because gerrymandering actually really impacts the 190th district seat. Okay, so now, so what happens here? In addition to the other thing that the state house determined was how we were going to, what does the state control? They control welfare benefits. So they were in control of how we were going to disseminate additional health care. They were in control of what the emergency relief for health care looked like. The state was responsible for, okay, this the big one, because y'all know, the unemployment compensation crisis. It took them 8 weeks to actually get the PUA up and running. And for the first 4 weeks of regular UC, which has always been just regular unemployment compensation, they were so overloaded that there were, people, they were backlogged. So people couldn't even get their ID numbers and things to work. Everybody was deemed essential, but they didn't think until last week. It was last week that they actually moved people who were in other non-essential areas and trained them to actually get the PUA and UC processed. It wasn't until last week that they decided to move folks over to DPW so folks could get their emergency Medicaid. Okay, that was last week. But those are the things that our government at the state level handles directly. What else do the folks at our state level handle? They handle the funding for education, what actually is flowing into the city. So how much the various school districts are actually getting is controlled at the state level. So we may not at the state level control the actual school district, but who gets the money and how they get it is controlled at the state level. Yes, Sarita, we did. Now, this is interesting, and I love that you know this. Didn't we win a gerrymandering decision in the PA Supreme Court last year, ordering certain counties to more fairly redistrict? Yes, we did. And that is the reason that they actually believe that some counties are actually up the flip. You see? Okay. So now here we are. There are challenges to the stay-at-home order, and that's going on in the Pennsylvania Commonwealth courts, the courts of our Commonwealth. And actually, they were knocked down. And so they've left the stay-at-home order exactly where it is. And it's, forced a lot of fight. Now let's get to the city level. And this is where it gets confusing. And I say this because people all the time are like, well, this is when you get back to who didn't do what. Okay, who didn't do what? So now here in the city, we have the Commonwealth courts. It's really crazy because when we're challenging stuff that the city does, it actually goes something to go called Commonwealth court. Okay, and equity court and all these things are local. And then you have city council. And that's like the legislative branch. They make the laws for the city. And then you have the mayor, and he is the executive branch at the local level. Now, city council is responsible for, they are the direct service provider. So all of the stuff that y'all generally need and you're complaining about, that's city council. So when you say they didn't pick up my trash, that's city council. When you say, they didn't, somebody closed the street and they weren't supposed to, that's city council. When we argue about zoning, that is city council. When we talk about the licensing and who has licenses and who doesn't, that's city council. When we talk about The real estate taxes, that's city council. When we talk about access to goods and services, meaning the PGW, the taxes there, that's city council. When we talk about the street being dug up and not fixed back, that's city council. When we talk about the mask that we didn't get, well, we know $85 million went to city council so that, or strike that, $85 million was granted as a part of our Philadelphia Relief Fund. And every single member of city council got an additional or their own out of that $400,000 that they controlled that was supposed to provide direct services to their constituents. I'm going to go back one more time. Everyone got $400,000 to provide direct services to their constituents. And I'm going to just leave that there because people are calling me for masks. I'm providing masks. I'm not a member of city council. People are calling me because they haven't had their food delivered. Okay, I'm happy to do it, but that's direct constituent services. That is city council. And even more so, it's interesting that I've been very responsive, but I'm not elected to anything. People have asked me over and over again, so where are my representatives? Meaning, where's my folks from city council? Where's my folks from the state? And where's my folks from the feds? So, and the reason that they ask me that is because we call whoever we can get on the phone. And I'm not mad at you. But this is the reason I wanted to do this civics lesson, because I want y'all to call the right people so you can get the right result. A lot of times what happens is that you don't get what you're looking for because you start at the wrong place. So if you are calling State Representative Danyl Patterson, because I'm going to speak into existence, you're calling State Representative Danyl Patterson about the hole in your street, State Representative Danyl Patterson still has to call, and in my area, Councilman Jones or Councilwoman Gautier. I still have to call them or their offices more so because we don't provide direct services or a direct link to the streets department. We just don't. It does not mean that the state folks don't have any say or any sway, because of course, if a state representative calls you, that moves you up the ladder maybe a little bit quicker than if April Bussy Baxter, because that's the name that I can see in front of me, actually calls. However, what can you contact your state representative about? You can contact your state representative about the monies that are needed to repair the 2 state highways that are in the 190th, Lancaster Avenue and part of Market Street. That you can call your state representative about. But even then, the only thing that a state representative directly can do is talk about the funding to keep those repaired. They still don't provide the services to do the repairs. Other things that are constantly, a concern, and they're real concerns, the trash and blight in our communities. And it has been ridiculous. I don't know. I'm very much abiding by the stay-at-home order, but I still got to go get food too. And I'm honest, y'all know I still, make my way over to the One City Bucks, Starbucks with the drive-through and treat myself a little bit while I'm out. But what you see is that the graffiti is at an all-time high up and down Market Street. I got on 76 and I'm just like, well, I feel kind of like maybe they should just let him, have all that kind of graffiti, because if you can get up on that sign to get that done and put all that fabulous tagging there. And I mean, I'm like, because I'm not getting up there and I don't even know how you stop that, because if I was the police riding down and saw it, by the time I get off exit, come back around, they're going. But because our roads have been closed, because people have not been on them, that means that the tagging is at an all-time high. Those are the things that the state rep is responsible for. But the state rep is also responsible for creating the laws. That's what the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the state reps do. Now, let me talk about some of those laws, because they are laws that directly impact you. Did you know that there is a law in Pennsylvania written into our legislature, into our code, that every single county can have daycare for someone who is at jury duty? Every single county. So, and it's actually written in that as a part of the filing fees that lawyers pay, so that's not to you, an allocation of that actually goes to state mandated daycare for jurors who are serving. But we don't have that here in Philadelphia, and we have the highest filing fees in all of Pennsylvania, because all the state reps do is they got together and put it in the code. It is up to the city of Philadelphia locally to determine how that code is going to be followed. Same thing for education. Money is allocated to Philadelphia. Then the Philadelphia School District determines how it's actually going to be used for our students. Well, this is problematic because we all say all the time, funding, 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 funding. We're not getting enough money. Now, I will say to you, we know that even the Republican Commission on Education that did a study on this determined that we don't get enough money for education, meaning Philadelphia is underfunded by more than $1 billion, not a million, $1 billion with a B dollars every year, and has been since 2007. So that's 13 years. So that's $13 billion that we are actually owed for education here in the city of Philadelphia. But our legislators, who actually determine the budget every single year, somehow continue to keep Philadelphia from that $1 billion, let alone the $13 billion from the last years. So what's the result of that? We didn't have Wi-Fi for our kids once we finally got them the Chromebooks that were actually donated and refurbished. So we didn't pay for them. They were donated and refurbished. And then we didn't have Wi-Fi for them because there's nothing extra in the budget. So Tamika, yes, I've never heard of daycare for that purpose. Do you know how many people don't want to serve on a jury because of child care concerns? Well, Tamika, I will tell you. In 2019, I had 8 cases go to jury. And in those 8 cases, the number one reason for hardship for jury duty was I don't have anybody to take care of my kids. It was the number one reason. And guess what guess what they look like the most of the people who were trying the case in the courtroom? Because I'm gonna just tell you that every case that I tried, I was the only Black woman in there. So, and all those people who needed childcare looked like me. Okay, so yes, Emmanuel, over 13 billion. So now what happens with that? We got to figure out how we're going to have these direct services. And the reason this becomes important is this. We are in the middle of a pandemic. Our kids have been out of school now for 10 weeks. They've been out of school. No, they've been out of school 11 weeks because they shut schools down 2 weeks before. So, oh, wow, almost 3 months. Our kids have been out of school almost 3 months. They're not scheduled to go back to school until after Labor Day. Or are they? So we done had 3 months and nobody has figured out what we're doing with these kids come September. They don't know if we're going to have them back in the buildings. We have not made arrangements for any distance learning. We've not prepared our families so they can be multi-generational, grade generational teachers at home. We have not updated our systems. Matter of fact, they told us that there are almost 12,000 kids in the school district of Philadelphia that they've had no contact with since schools closed. 12,000. That's according to an article from Billy Penn that was picked up by the Inquirer. 12,000 kids have just disappeared from the system. Yes, these kids are suffering. And you are right, Miss Osborne. Yes, they look like us. Zahira, you ain't said nothing but a word. We need to start teaming up and working together in this city to make changes. And that's the reason I'm coming to you with this civics lesson. Is because when we understand, we can band together. What I can promise you is that if you choose me to elect as your state representative, well, wait a minute, strike that because you got to speak into existence. When you choose me to be your state representative in the 190th, I commit to a multidisciplinary constituent services across all lines to work with our congressman's office, Dwight Evans, and our council people in the area, all of the at-larges, and of course, Curtis Jones and Jamie Gauthier, to make sure that our services are reaching the individuals who they are intending to reach. I've already committed to you that I will work with the existing nonprofit providers in our area who've already been doing the work so that we can make sure that we are delivering services effectively and efficiently. As I said, tomorrow I'll be right back out with Frontline Dads giving out foods again. Why? Because the service is needed. they have the access and the resources, and they have a true system to make sure that everybody who's coming out, young and old, can be healthy and safe while we reach the goal of making sure that we have food sustainability in our community and are not having food insecurities ad nauseum. Okay. So, and when I say ad nauseum, I mean they do it every single Saturday. This is not new to them because we in a pandemic. What's new to them is that their resources are being stretched because we have, small little goodwill groups who are, at the share program and, banging out the food bank so they don't have the same access that they had before. Now, what are the other things that we have that we can impact directly? So now what I want y'all to do is y'all need to contact Congressman Evans. Y'all need to contact Congresswoman Scanlon. Y'all need to contact them and write to them and let them know that you want Stimulus 3 passed now. As a matter of fact, did y'all see the audacity? We're in the middle of a pandemic and they're trying to go on vacation. Did y'all hear that? On vacation. Okay, they're already at home because they're not allowed to meet in chambers, in the 2 chambers. But now they're going to go home and go on break. And Trump said he ain't looking at nothing till after Memorial Day. Are you kidding me? We are in the middle of a crisis. And you need to let the people that you have elected, the people that we have elected to represent us. That also means don't just flood the Democrats. Flood those Republicans as well. Okay, you need to make sure that I can't remember that man's name because he don't do nothing but block nothing. What's Casey's counterpart? I forgot his name. I really did. I just really blank out and I can't remember my second senator's name. I can see him in my mind. I can see what he looks like. Help me out, y'all. What's the other senator? The other federal senator. The one that does nothing. What's his name? Because he blocked, strike that. He doesn't do anything besides vote with Trump. Toomey, thank you, Gilda. I'm like, what's his name? I'm like, I can see him, the hair and everything. Y'all need to making sure that y'all contact Pat Toomey's office. Now, I know that somebody's contacting Pat Toomey because he got so good, he took his phone off the hook. I'm not lying to you. Phone off the hook. So y'all need to be emailing. And y'all need to be writing and y'all need to be calling. And they have a text line and you need to make sure that you are banging those out as well. Because a lot of times they act like, well, you didn't vote for me. Then that means you don't get services. No, you are still my senator. So it doesn't matter if I voted for you or not. I need you to get out here and do something that I want you to do. Okay. The same thing for your representatives. When we had the unemployment issue going on, if everybody could reach out to me and call me about their crisis, which I was quite happy to assist with, then why weren't you calling the folks you actually elected to serve you? Call them too at the state level. Okay, you don't know who they are? Go look them up. And if you don't know who they are, that problem is theirs. That means they're really not doing their job now, doesn't it? I don't know. Now, what do I feel good about today? I done been on now 45 minutes of teaching you basic civics. And actually, it's a little bit more complex even than that. But I want to make sure that everybody's reaching out to who they need to reach out to make sure they're getting it done. Okay? Just like I know that folks have really been reaching out to Kenny about this $85 million and where's it going. We're still looking for oversight for it, just like the folks at the federal level are looking for oversight for the CARES Act money. Okay? The SBA oversight and the distribution oversight. Well, what do we know? What do I feel good about? Right before I came on, I published to you, and it's on the page, there is an expansion of the PPP. Okay. And this is really, so there's an expansion of it. So now seasonal workers and employment opportunities can now apply for PPP. And that's important. And that's very important because y'all know summertime in the city, we got Maroney's over there on 63rd Street. We got Fred's Water Ice in Southwest. And come on, you can't forget about Sadiq's over there on 60th Street. Those water ice stands employ folks from our community. And Rita's Water Ice, and because they're standing out there, but they weren't eligible for PPP before. They are. So if you know any of those folks, make sure that they're making sure that they now apply. This has only been open as of Wednesday to additional folks. There's an entire article on it by my fabulous friend, Deneen, was it Pasukos Waislick. I can say her last name, but not the middle one. Not her maiden name, Pasukos Waislick. And so you can look up the article. You can always contact Deneen. She will help you all the way from Florida, those folks who need that information. Now, something else that we know is the SBA idle money has been slowed down. It's actually not. They're actually still like $60 billion away from where they thought it was going to be. They thought that they were going to run out of PPP and they thought they were going to run out of idle. But the problem with it is this. The SBA just decided, because they just decided, they ain't telling anybody. They decided last week that they're only going to use it for folks who have agricultural inventory problems, agricultural distribution. They didn't tell us. They just like made up this new arbitrary rule. That's just what they decided. Yeah, that's it. You know what, Rob? That's true. That's how they're treating us like kids, as if they can tell us anything. Kings, I haven't been there like in 2 years, Zahira. My girlfriend used to live around the corner, so I would drop her off at home, which is also called, we would stop and get water ice. But but yes, so now the SBA just decided that. Something else I feel good about. Just yesterday, Ernie Bristow, thank you, Ernie, because you know what? This is always the model. We can do better together. Ernie sent me the updated LISC application, LISC, and I'm going to put that on the website, on the Facebook and on the website, that they have reopened applications for those small business ones. So, Bridget, yeah, so any suggestions to get Councilman Curtis Jones to call his constituents? So all I can say about getting anybody to call anybody is the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So keep calling, and keep calling. I'm not responsible at this time for anybody else's constituent services. But what I can tell you is that my team has been very, very busy. And that's the other thing that I feel good about, right? I feel good about the fact that I have been able to help you all in a crisis. And I thank you all for permitting me to do so, for even putting me in this position. When they say that things happen for a reason, who knew back in December when we had yet another issue here in the 190th, and I decided to, that I was going to vie for the seat, that we would be in such a turmoil and crisis that, somebody with my skill level and my education and my experiences would be so in demand in my community. And I'm very thankful for the platform that is social media that helped me to reach even more people. So my team, I am thankful for, because I got to thank Chloe and Prue, because they have been on the phones. Desiree, they are on the phones. They are answering them. They're responding to emails all the time. They make sure they get the information right over to me. I got to thank Tony Daniel, because he keeps me on the ball, letting me know about, policy changes. Teresa Iriati, because I don't never say it right, but I'm sorry, I'm going to say T. Thank her for letting me know what policy is going on across the nation and how we can be impacted here, and how maybe we can mold our own here in Pennsylvania so that we can respond better to the crisis. I got to thank Hanif and Mike Tucker, Hanif May and Mike Tucker for, being boots on the ground. Jonathan Gary for making sure that the food deliveries are done and organized and timely so that our seniors are protected. I have had truly a fabulous team. I got to thank Shelly Williams and Carissa Driscoll for keeping social media popping up, current, making sure that we are responding to those inbox messages, because they come at all hours of the night, so they let them know, they forward them, and when we can't answer, we make sure that we get an answer for you. I got to thank all those attorneys on the team. Rhonda Hill Wilson providing me with nursing home information and medical negligence information, and how we can change and draft laws, reaching out to George Gossett and all the information he's given me about real estate and construction, how that's impacted, and Eric White's letting me know about the laws that are coming forth regarding who's going to be protected and who's not going to be protected post-COVID, as we've been changing laws left and right. I have had truly a fabulous team and had a good time with them. the folks who've come on the show, all the community organizations reaching out. I mean, I have met so many different people just, who've been willing to provide and share information with you. The folks over there at Elite 30 Association, talking about the frontline dads, NOMO. I've got it. There is really too many folks to name. They have just been out there. Daryl Thomas even letting me know what's going on in the barber and beauty salon industry. Oh yeah, well, you can't forget about Perry, because first of all, y'all know that's our brother from another mother, because his mama named him first name R. Okay, so sometimes y'all will see him on here, first name R. Perry has been fabulous. He provides us with new and interesting ways to reach out to you. Fundraising that's not always about the raising and more about the fun, interesting ways to connect with you and make sure that everyone's voice is heard. It has been really a fabulous, fabulous ride. I thank you so much for coming on this with me. We're going to leave that as the last taste in your mouth. Thank you. Deborah, see, there you go. Look, we've been responding. Thank you for a quick response to my problem. I'm not even living in Philly now, but my family still resides there. And that's what it's about. Deborah, I got to tell you, do you know how many folks have reached out to me from across the state and across the United States? There are people who reach out to me from like Erie County and Schuylkill County and Monroe County because they have questions. So I want you all to know it's not just your representatives or your council people or your congressperson that's not been responsive. People tell me all the time, it's kind of what's been the norm. It's everybody is telling me, people tell me all the time, they're like, I'm glad I tuned in because I had no idea about the PUA or how to apply. I had no idea about the barber licensing and additional funds that were available to barbers and hairstylists. I had no idea how to fill out a LISC application. They didn't have any idea how to do any of this. Folks who are still calling me because they're very confused about the voting process. And I got to tell you, that's the other thing that I was going to leave you with that I am thankful for. I'm actually very thankful to the commissioner's office in the city of Philadelphia. So I really got to thank Lisa Dealey and Omar Sabir and Alan Schmidt, because you know what? Last year, we had one commissioner who never even came to work. Okay, we had one that never even came to work, and now we've got 3 who are working every day to make sure that we are not denied our right to vote in a pandemic, in a situation where nobody understands what to do. And they've been working overtime. They've been as responsive as they can. Things change all the time. They get the information out. They have their Zoom calls. You just got to be available. And it's been my pleasure to make sure that I can get the information out to even more people. So it has been a really, really fabulous ride. So I'm just going to always remind you of something that my mama reminded me of, because they tell me all the time, I got to tell you a little bit more about the candidate herself. I've told y'all over and over again that my mom and dad made sure that I understood that my law degree was for everybody and not just for me. Well, the other thing, the teachings of my parents, and y'all just don't know, y'all didn't know Betty Dowdy. Betty Dowdy was a very interesting woman. She was a straight shooter, very much like me. They call me Junior, as a matter of fact. And it's this. She didn't care about accolades. She didn't care about recognition. She cared about the work. And, a smile and a good job was really, really hard to get from her, or at least, especially from me, because her answer was always, we gave you every opportunity, we gave you access, and we gave you education. Of course, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to excel because it's what we raised you to do. But I also know that as I sit here day in and day out, reading the laws, trying to make sure that I've got the ins and outs for all of you, trying to find new and creative ways to make it better for life here in our community, making sure that people are fed, that our kids are educated, that we all have access, that we're finding new ways to build our economy, that those things, I know that I would get a good job, and you're doing exactly what we taught you to, Pooh. So with that, I am Danyl Patterson, candidate for the 190th State Representative seat. Yes, I am so West Philly, and I am trying to be your representative. I'm going to ask you all to go over to my website at www.pattersonlegal.com. That's a habit for the law firm. www.patterson for 190th.com. That's Patterson for 190th.com. Continue to follow me on social media. Sign a pledge card. Learn some more about me because the position papers are up and they are plentiful. And starting next week, we're going to be going through them one by one. So we're going to talk gun violence, education, economy, social justice, economic justice. We are going to talk about our health and our safety. We're going to talk about how we're going to help seniors. There's a lot to talk about, and I hope that I will see you here. Until then, I am Danyl Patterson, and we will do better together.